Indie answers question 4. Does publishing a novel change anything about writing? So the short answer to this question is yeah, changes quite a bit. The long and much more, well, my own personal experience answer to this question is that when I first published Ruby Rain, my first book, the version of it that you're reading now, if you've picked it up, it's free if you want to pick it up from Amazon. The ebook is anyway. The version of that you would be reading now is not the version that I initially published back in 2018. It's not the same version. I've cycled through multiple versions of it. I think technically this is the 4th or 5th edition of it, something like that. But anyway, publishing it gave me an idea about what to actually do as a writer if you want to make something that, well, I'm going to make it sound like I'm being a bit hard on myself right now, but just the truth, make something that isn't total garbage, basically. Because what I used to do before I published Ruby Rain in the first place was I just wrote one draft, and then that was it. I left it alone. I didn't even edit it, didn't even consider rewriting it, just wrote one draft, was like, that's it, and that's the lot. Let's see if I can get this published. I only did that for one of them, for the very first one, then I didn't for the rest of them. But the point being, I wrote quite a lot of stories, and quite a lot of stories at once, or in quick succession when I first started writing, because I wasn't trying to get them published. I was just writing them for me, and writing them for me, I was only ever writing one draft, going, okay, that's done. Where's the other idea in my head? Oh, here's the other idea in my head. Let's write this down too. And then, etc., etc., it repeats itself. So I probably wrote like maybe five stories a year that were like novella length. So writing with the intention of publishing for the first time with Ruby Rain in of itself, even with the first version, I had to do a lot of things I was not, let's just say that I was not exactly prepared to do. Like for Ruby Rain, when I first wrote it, the rough draft took me about 5-6 weeks, and then I had to edit it, and I knew I had to edit it because it technically wasn't the first book I'd ever published. Monochrome was, but we don't talk about that. That's not available anymore for good reason. But when I started editing it, I didn't really know what I was editing for, which is why I came up with the checklist, which is in one of the Indie Opinions episodes, where there's like 7 things I look at when I edit, and I do rounds of it, where one read is for world building, one read is for spelling and grammar, one read is for character details, etc., etc. And with a specific focus on those, but obviously changing anything I see that's wrong in the moment. And that was how I developed that. So it forced me to develop like an actual editing technique, if you will, because I didn't have one beforehand. And it also just taught me in general that if you want to publish something, you got to rewrite it, which I did. I did rewrite Ruby Rain. Maybe not enough times, and maybe I didn't edit the second draft enough, and that's why I had to go back to it for maybe 2 years afterwards to make sure it was okay. But that's what I had to do. So yeah, publishing your first book, like self-publishing, for traditional publishing, I imagine they would tell you all of these issues outright, and you wouldn't have to figure it out for yourself. Obviously, I wouldn't know, but it taught me that in order to write something that you think other people would want to read, you got to put in more work for it. Like, I think all in all, Ruby Rain took me 6 months total. About 6 months total. I started it in April and finished it in October of 2018, so about 6 months. And it's not a very big book, it's only 25,000. Actually, no, it's only 24,500 even, it's not even 25,000. and there are only two drafts of it. But still, when you're so used to writing a story in 1, 2 months and then completely ignoring it, it it forces you to change how you look at writing, and forces you to look at it as more of a long-term process than just something you write when you feel like it, then there, it's done. We move on to the next one. I've had so many difficult issues with needing to practice my patience since then, with having other projects in the works that I want to work on. Particularly at the moment, actually, I have that issue where I just want to get Emerald Executioner out and then focus on writing like my next novel that's going to be completely disconnected from the books I've written so far for the first time, which will be interesting because it will be completely standalone, meaning that I don't have to worry about all the past stuff that I've been putting into Emerald Executioner from my past books, like the vampires storylines, the other storylines, the relationship storylines, because I'll just be given completely new things to work with. And I want to do that. I want to start that like now, but obviously because at the minute I'm writing Emerald Executioner and I need to finish that before I even consider doing anything else, I have to practice my patience a little bit and be a little bit like, no, you've just started editing the second draft. Once you've completely edited the second draft, maybe you can publish it, or maybe you need to write a third one. It depends on how good the final second draft is. If it's fine and you can publish the second one, then fine, publish it, then work on your next book. But do not work on your next book at the same time, which is just another thing that I feel publishing has taught me. Because I have before written multiple projects at the same time, like with Buried in Thanatos, which are two stories of mine that I both released in 2019. Thanatos was a short story collection, 23 short stories in all, and Buried was a book in this shared universe. The third one that I wrote, wait no, the second one that I wrote even, sorry, but writing them at the same time was a bad idea, let's just say, because I mean, I did it, but I was so burnt out from it, and I hated writing so much that I didn't start on my next book for like maybe 3 or 4 months late after I'd finished both of them, because I just couldn't. So that's another thing that I feel like publishing stories teaches you, is that, or writing books with the intention of publishing them, is that you should really focus on one at once. If you are going to focus on two or more, that's great. Just don't try and get them published at the same time, and don't expect them to both be done at the same time or work to a time limit on both of them. Because if you do that, you'll just end up burning yourself out and forcing yourself to you'll basically run yourself into the ground, which is what I almost did to myself. So yeah, there's quite a lot that it changes about just writing in general. It also teaches you how to another thing it teaches you that I only just now thought of, how to deal with responses. Obviously, responses aren't always going to be positive. And when you write just for you and you don't publish anything, you don't have to listen to anyone else's opinion necessarily. You don't ever see it necessarily either, because it's your book and you're writing it for you. So obviously, if you're looking at it and you hate it, you just change something about it before you make it available to people, or before you even let anyone else read it. You'd do that. But with it being published, it just changes how you write just in general, as in you gotta be, not as in you need to put a filter on necessarily, because you really shouldn't, I don't think, but I'd say it makes you more aware of how things might come across. Like, I've received, I think Rewritten has 5-star reviews mostly, but it has a few maybe 1-star reviews. I think it's one of those books that's kind of divisive. And the one written review on it for Goodreads is a 1-star, which I did not react well to when I first saw it. Let's just say that. Looking back in hindsight, I do think she was kind of right in some areas, but wrong in others. But it just something that it teaches you is that people are going to have opinions of your book. And they're not necessarily going to be like, oh, the book was all amazing and it's all going to be good. Some of them might be good, some of them might be bad, some of them might be neutral. And you just have to, really, when you publish books, you just have to sort of be aware of that and aware of how certain things you write might come across to other people. Like even if you intend it for it to be viewed as one way, someone still might view it in a way and put a negative spin on it, if that makes any sense. But because I write lesbian fiction, obviously, being very obviously not a lesbian, I find that that probably links into some of the negative reviews, probably, in the fact that it just seems like I'm doing a male gazy sort of thing, even though if you read the books, I'm not male gazing at all with any of it. But people can still read into it however they want, and that's something you're going to have to learn to deal with. So anyway, that was my answer to the question: does publishing change anything about writing? Put in short, yeah, it changes quite a lot. Then I would recap it, but I've already gone a bit over. So I'm just gonna let you know that tell you guys thank you for watching. Please let me know any suggestions for any questions you want me to answer that I could maybe do, as soon as next week if you really if you answer quickly, and please follow me on all socials. Subscribe, follow me on Twitter, Instagram. Yeah, just Twitter and Instagram, and feel free to message me with any of your thoughts. And yeah, and see you next week. Right on.